Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to welcome to the stage our Mayor's panel, which we're very pleased and excited to have with us. It's a great honour to have so many elected representatives with us today, as I said before. Of course, our host, Mayor Luke Smith, please. Mayor Rachel Chambers from North Burnett Regional Council, Councillor Godwin Smith from Central Highlands, Councillor Nigel Westall, and Councillor Kate Richards. Could you please welcome them to the stage for me now? Fantastic. And Mayor Luke Smith has just informed me, to my great excitement and edification, that Unpacking Innovation is now the #1 trending hashtag on Twitter in Australia. So I think you should all give yourself a round of applause. Well done indeed. And could I also welcome to the stage Mr. Dan Fletcher, the Group Manager at Central Highlands, who will be helping me facilitate this session. And two of the support crew, if we could just grab a roving microphone for Dan, that'd be fantastic. Okay, colleagues, so we have our fantastic group of mayors this morning here and councillors representing their constituents, representing Queensland and their communities. So it's really great for us to be able to have a conversation with them about what innovation means for their communities and for their councils and for Queensland. So can I start off the question with, I guess, one of the tough ones. What are some of the barriers that we face to innovation, both in an urban and a regional environment, of course, and, because we don't just like talking about barriers, how might we address such a barrier? So, Mayor Luke Smith, can I start with you?
Sure. I think the biggest barrier is that innovation has become a buzzword. And when people hear it, they just glaze over and they're like, I'm not really interested in hearing this because it's something I've heard before and no one's doing anything about it. And for us, when we look at innovation at Logan City Council, it's mainly about having a paradigm shift on how we view the future. So we've coined a phrase called next generation government. And what we're saying to our staff is we're going to put a line in the sand for in what we've been doing for the last 30 years, we will not be doing in the next 10. We need to have a forged paradigm shift on how we approach our city's direction and our city's future. Because even local government is changing. The state government at the moment, for example, is working on a new way of waste management for cities. And the old adage of roads, rates and rubbish is going to change for local government. There will now be a case where local governments don't have a monopoly on collection of waste. And so we can have a paradigm shift in saying we can either be part of the solution or we can stand and fight against it. And I think about the Uber and taxi industry fight that recently happened. Uber was always going to happen. We can look at the future for waste management, say they'll always be now competitors, and we can be part of the problem, we can be part of the solutions. Just looking at things differently, I think. But I think that the biggest issue is the word itself, innovation, has become a buzzword.
Absolutely, that's absolutely 100% correct. Mayor Rachel Chambers, could I perhaps get your views about this issue of what are the barriers and how might we address them?
I think time. So I've thought about this question and I think the barrier is time. So we don't give ourselves time to think. So if you think about in your normal daily life, we get up and we go to work and we do what we do every day. We go to work and we go home, and if we've got time we see the family and go to bed and we do it all again the next day. It's only days like this, and I applaud everyone who has come here today to actually think. It's stopping and thinking. Imagine if even in this room, we had a problem when today we all stopped and we all thought about it. I can guarantee you we would have solutions to that problem by the end of the day. So I think it's time. It's also in the nature of social media now. There's a lot of naysayers getting a lot of media space. It's the element of risk that we have spoken about today as well. So the idea of innovation is that it's something new, it's something untested, it's something untried. That there's always that scare factor, that what if it doesn't work? What's going to happen? I think that we need to give people permission to fail in the innovation space.
Absolutely. Permission to fail, risk appetite, one of the critical lessons from my study of around the world, so fantastic answer. Can I just ask my colleague Dan to ask the next question for us?
Thanks, Brooke. We've heard this morning around the advanced levels of partnerships, in particular in Barcelona, that the public and private sector have achieved for their outcomes. How does Australian local government achieve those advanced levels of partnership and collaboration? Might throw it down to Kate, if you're...
That's a great question. My background, I came from construction before coming in as a councillor. And so I spent a lot of experience with working in the private area, working with the public sector. And what we found in that area was the challenges that in the public realm, there's so many rules. There's legislations, there's acts, there's things that must be done a certain way. Now having come across and come into the councillorship area and working with those set rules, it's being open and clear with the workforce in councils that it is okay to think outside the square. That's where our innovation comes from, and it is the people that work in our councils and out with the community that hear on the streets what's the things that we should be addressing and how we can do it differently, and why are we spending so much money. And the little thing that isn't understood is actually there are acts, there are legislation. So to me, I think there's a lot of ability and a lot of change that we can do. It's how our organisation's culture will change to fit with innovation.
Thank you. Councillor Godwin-Smith, from a regional perspective, what do you see the challenges around local governments partnering in an advanced way with not only other levels of government but private sector as well?
Yep, so the Central Highlands Regional Council, for those of you in the room are wondering, where the hell is that? So Central Queensland, we are an area about 60,000 square kilometres, size of Tasmania. We have 13 unique and individual communities within that part of the world. So I think when people think innovation, they think, well, it all must happen down in the southeast corner. But the reality is, in the Central Highlands, we are a bit of an economic powerhouse. Resources, tourism, agriculture and construction are our main industries. Some of our economic outputs would rival any community in Queensland and Australia. Some of the challenges are, as Amanda, I think, from Better Internet for Rural, Regional and Remote Australia pointed out, is connectivity. And for us, it's about getting that the fundamentals right. So we've got a good platform going forward. But in our area, agriculture and the resource sector are probably two areas in particular where we are really leading the way in innovation. And we know innovation is a bit of a buzzword and people innovate for the sake of innovating, but it really is about solving a problem or creating an opportunity. And if you just focus on those things that you do well in your community and add value through innovation, as I said, solving a problem or creating an opportunity, then that's a good basis for us to start. But in regional Queensland, one of the biggest problems, as I said, is connectivity. So just basic and reliable access to internet and telecommunications. But a great example in the Central Highlands is around collaborative partnerships, and we partner with Swarm Farm Robotics in Emerald, and that basically came out, an idea that came out of a grain producer who got sick of driving a tractor spent too long on the tractor, has developed a series of robots that weigh no more than 200 kilograms, and those robots work in partnership with each other in broadacre farming to kill weeds, basically. So our council partnered with that startup, and it was our investment that triggered investment from other companies like Telstra, the state government, and universities. So sometimes it's that little show of confidence from your local government sector that will trigger, a greater, that really got that project off the ground. And if you Google Swarm Farm Robotics, it's a pretty great story.
Fantastic. Look, could I just get a comment perhaps from Councillor Nigel about both partnerships and barriers? Thank you.
Well, look, it certainly does need to be a collaborative approach. What are the barriers? Well, apathy, fear and ignorance. I'm a dinosaur. I even used my Refidex to find the way here this morning because I trust my map better than something in my car.
Tweet that, ladies and gentlemen.
But what do you need to move forward? Well, first you've got to have the courage to take that step forward. You need those incentives and you need the skills. So you need to think forward to the next generation. Don't provide for the current generation because they'll not be satisfied anyway. You need to think of what does the next generation want. Now, the Scenic Rim Council has a landfill centre. I'm not a technocrat, but Logan City Council very kindly puts its waste in our landfill centre. That landfill centre apparently produces gases. If we don't do something with those gases, apparently we have to pay the fine for it. So our officers have gone out there, researched it, taken the courage and we now actually get money for that gas. I'm not quite sure how it works, but because we've taken the next step and looked forward, that landfill centre is very productive. So you do need to look forward and look for the next generation.
You're welcome.
Pleasure.
Collaboration, ladies and gentlemen, happening before our eyes. Mayor Luke Smith, innovation is a lot about what we can learn from others and applying that in our own community. But it's also about promoting and motivating and making people aware of innovation possibilities. Joaquin will tell you what a fantastic job Barcelona has done of self-promoting and becoming the home of smart cities. And it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, Mayor, what can Logan do to learn from others and from the rest of the world? And how could Logan promote itself to become an attractor for innovation?
Wow. So we're not really good at promoting what we do. And we have a lot of very smart and talented staff and tremendous opportunities in our city that we just take for granted. And I think the first thing we need to do is just have a good comb through what's going on around us so that we can start promoting that more and more. We're aware of it, and we have our Logan water staff, for example, who 10 years ago designed a valve that would reduce pressure in pipes but would open up for water pressure when a fire hose needed to be used to douse out a house fire. So this was first of its kind at its time, and we were very shy in telling people how great these guys were. And so we need to get better at that. That's the first thing we need to do. I think the other thing is that we need to ensure that we, pretty much what Rachel was saying before, we ensure that people can take the risk, and it's not bad to fail, So we want people to come alongside us, work with us in the journey, and get on board. And if your idea doesn't work the first time, that's okay. We actually want to get around you and ensure that innovation is promoted right around the city. And what the concept of getting together and having hubs is doing is allowing people to say, I've got this startup, it might have failed the first time, but here's a whole bunch of people in the room that can help me strategize and collaborate to ensure that the second time I give it a go, we can do it better and do it right. So I think by allowing opportunities across our city for people to have the conversation, where we have seen innovation hubs work well around the world is exactly where they've got people who sit outside of big business, outside of bureaucracy, and they group people together who are just everyday folk who are able to provide solutions to problems. And when it works naturally and it works at the grassroots of the city, then the whole city captures innovation, and then it promotes itself worldwide.
Fantastic. Sir, I'll come to you in a second. Thank you very much. We will take some questions from the audience. But before that, Mayor Rachel Chambers, can I perhaps ask you about how you'd like to see your community learning from what's happening around the world, and how you believe that your community can promote innovation and what's happening and all the fantastic things so you can really catalyse more of it?
So going back to internet, and I won't harp on it because everyone in this room gets it, that I had a really great guy from the NBN come to me and say, I still feel sorry for him, come to hit me and say, here's a presentation, imagine all the things you could do with the NBN. Can you imagine being connected? How about your businesses? How about this? How about that? And I nearly hurt him. So that we know what we can do. And in this region, what I want to do is break down the perception that regional and rural areas don't play in this space, okay? Our areas and our areas have been exporting worldwide for 20 and 30 years before it's become popular and become easier, I suppose. I was born in Brisbane. I grew up in Logan. Springwood is my town, as is Rochdale. That we like fine dining. We're human beings. We like the same things you do. We like to be connected. We like to walk down the street and talk to people. It still perplexes me that we are seen as different. So cities and regional areas and rural areas are seen as different. We bloody well like the same stuff. That we're still human beings. So we still have the same hopes, dreams, wishes, ideas as everyone in this room. And imagine if, as human beings, we all took on one problem to solve instead of we all trying to solve the same problems. So say there's 100 problems in this room. if we joined and we collaborated with like-minded people, able to solve one problem at a time, and we all stopped trying to solve the 100 problems, which we do in local government. We tried to solve 100 problems on our own, and we don't get anywhere, and we wonder why we don't get anywhere. It is that collaboration model that it basically is the key. And that's why Luke and I, we struck up a collaborative partnership a year ago, and that has been really, really beneficial, not just personally, but also for our region. So what it offers to our region, this kind of collaborative model, is better resources, better support, better ideas, bigger ideas. If we can then take this model nationally, internationally, then we've got a real chance.
Yeah, fantastic answer. And I'd just like to affirm that the principles of innovation, of smart communities, as I like to call them, of digital transformation apply in regional areas just as they do in city areas. Different challenges, different scale, but absolutely 100% correct. And I do like the idea of 100 problems, and let's make it a maxim today, or something we can take away, that we've got 99 problems, but innovation ain't one of them. Did you get that one? Sorry, no. A few Twitters in the audience. Okay, over to Dan now, my colleague, to ask a question of the other councillors. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Brooke. This one's on digital technologies and the digital ecosystem again, which was spoken about earlier. Where does local government currently sit embracing those technologies, and where do we need to be in the next 5 or 10 or 15 years? Councillor Richards, do you want to go first?
Thanks. Great question. Look, Brisbane City Council has established a place called The Capital, which is our Chief Digital Officer, Kat Matson, chairs it, with Tokyo 2 and the Fishburners. And that all sounds very technical, but basic language that I found out is that it's where the community, where entrepreneurs, where startups can actually go. And it's 3 floors in a building that all those services that those businesses I spoke about are there. And it's at a price that they're able to afford. Whereas if you're at home with your startup and you're trying to work out how to get a brand, how to get it out there, don't know who to go to, councils come on board and brought them all together into one facility. So that's our first step in a journey that we know that we need to then change even more so now, because our next generations, like I have a 4-year-old, he actually knows how to change all my settings on my iPhone, and I'm like, where did that come from? So they pick it up so quickly. So we really do need to think outside the square consistently and not be afraid to go, hey, my 4-year-old, how did you do that? And he's like, just this, Mum. So, it's learning. When, we can't just sit back and go, oh, it's too different. We need to embrace it and just move forward with it.
Thank you. Councillor Godwin-Smith, how's Central Highlands embracing technology?
Well, as I said, we lead the way in a lot of areas, but what we do well, we do very well. And as I said, agriculture, tourism, resources are just 3 areas that I can think of straight away. So the resource sector in itself was forced into a bit of a innovation revolution when their cost of production exceeded what they were paid for their commodities. So they were forced into a situation where they had to look inwardly and find innovative ways of reducing costs. So what we see now in the Central Highlands, and we have 10 active coal mines in our Central Highlands region, is efficiencies where they produce more coal with less people. And in agriculture, as I said, we might be, we're home to the biggest number of businesses, but we are the smallest employer in the region. So compared to tourism, construction and the resources, they're our biggest employers, but in agriculture we can do more with less. So again, that was a situation that we were forced to look at when we couldn't compete with the resources sector in terms of getting people to come and work for us. So again, it's about adding value to what we do well. So in the space of tourism, I guess the next frontier for us would be we get hundreds of thousands of visitors each year to the Carnarvon Gorge National Park, for example. How do we understand what our visitors are doing in our region? How do we influence their behaviours? How do we create other opportunities for them? And how do we then utilise that data to add value to our neighbouring councils? So in local government, as Rachel was saying before, we do tend to try and solve a lot of problems on our own. So this is a really exciting step for us to collaboratively look at working together, sharing our experiences. Each of our regions is very unique, but a lot of the problems and the challenges and the opportunities are fairly similar. So we are really, really excited about going forward in this space of innovation and digital transformation and what those opportunities are going to be. But it'll be about working together, building partnerships with the private sector as well, and that's what local government do well. You can come out into the regions, and the great thing about smaller places like the Central Highlands, we've got a population of about 31,000. We all pretty much know each other, so we are great people to connect with and help you do business in our region. So we can connect people in the right ways. We can assist with grants and in other ways, but it is about adding value for us in the areas that we do really well, and maybe just looking for those other opportunities.
Thank you. And from a scenic rim perspective, Nigel, how's your current digital ecosystem and where do you see it transitioning to?
You're asking a dinosaur. Look, it's listen well, learn fast, and adapt rapidly. We need to work with our communities as well. And last week I sat with our Chamber of Commerce from Tanbury Mountain, and we had a discussion on digital disruption, which I gather is on the agenda here. And it was given by an accountant who said if they don't adapt, they will lose business, because there are now technologies that will allow you just put the data in, it will spew out all the analysis that the accountants do. So our businesses have got to adapt to these new technologies, and we need to help them. And the Scenic Rim, we are doing some workshops with our Chamber of Commerce, and obviously our people in council are looking at how better can we do things, not only to save money, but to be more productive and to be more helpful to our communities.
And flow on to one of the last questions then around, and you mentioned before that your waste to energy at the landfill there is obviously working well, but should local governments play a role in the renewable energy space? And if so, what does that role look like now, and how should it transform in the next 5 to 10 years? Mayor Luke Smith?
Absolutely, we should be part of the future. So one of the things we need to do differently in local government is we need to stop saying that's a state issue, that's a federal issue. We need to own the issue of the city. And we, as leaders in our cities, need to take the charge for what those concerns are and ensure that those needs are met. So when it comes to renewable energy, that's absolutely on our corporate plan, which we have adopted, about to adopt our draft corporate plan. And we are looking and searching for those options right now so that we can ensure that that is part of our future proofing for the energy and also for cost of living for people in our city.
From a regional perspective, how does local government collect, own, store and sell energy back to its constituents? For you?
So, local government, I agree that if we don't have a role in this space, who does? Because it's not... If I'm an industry head, I'll go, what's it got to do with me? So collectively, it is a local government issue. Talk about innovation. Let's talk about innovation. We've got a biogas hub at the moment, which we had an issue. So we had a problem. It was a piggery. A piggery wanted to expand. We couldn't allow a piggery to expand because we couldn't expand with their waste issue. We had a waste issue. So we looked into a biogas facility. Now that piggery can expand. It's an extra 60 jobs, plus that, and I'm not a technocrat either, that effluent is turned into something positive, turned into an energy and can be used. Can't be fed back into the grid, but that's another policy issue we'll deal with at another time. But it is solving those problems. Now, those problems may not change the world, may not change Queensland, but it's certainly changed one town's employment by 60. So it's about solving each issue as we see it. In saying that, when we've taken that to other areas of government, we were told it's quite a risky project. And we said, okay, who else is going to take on the risk? If we don't take on the risk, but it's that appetite for risk that we all are going to have to start embracing.
There's an interesting comment before from Kim around the dismissiveness of risk that he had within Barcelona. I think that's evident there from your example as well. Councillor Goldman-Smith, what's your thoughts on the renewable energy space for local government?
It's certainly not a a new term tossed around in our part of the world. It's a hot topic, I guess, and we geographically are very closely located to the proposed Carmichael coal project, which is the Adani project. So we are certainly engaged in conversation with Adani about what opportunities may exist in the Central Highlands around renewable energy and solar farms, and it certainly lends itself geographically. We've got great characteristics to go down the path of renewable energy, but how do we, in local government, I guess that's something that we're all sort of coming to terms with a bit and struggling a bit about what our role might be in that. But we know that working with people like Adani, we can certainly connect them with the right people to make these projects happen. It's about having good, robust and flexible planning processes too at a local government level that do foster and support that sort of development and incubation in your backyard. So that's a really important role that local government play in terms of not making it too hard for people to do business with you. But yes, absolutely, local government have a role in renewable energy. What that looks like going forward, I'm not entirely sure. Traditionally, local government have been a pretty conservative bunch of people to deal with and fairly risk adverse. So you're dealing with public funds, ratepayers, money. So it's all about what's in it for them as well. So I think it's an exciting and challenging space going forward, and certainly lots of opportunity.
Thank you. All right. Fantastic questions there. Now, we might take a few questions from the audience. For those who wish to ask questions, could you, if you wouldn't mind just stating your name and your organisation, that'd be fantastic, just so our councillors understand what the question is coming from. Thank you so much, sir.
Hi, my name is Jeff Smith. No relation to anyone on the stage. I work I volunteer a lot, as Luke knows, but I also work with Department of Communities, where I work with disability. And I use the adage, I've noticed, heard a couple of mayors mentioning the word failure. To me, failure is not trying. It's not about trying something and it doesn't succeed. You learn from those mishaps, but failure is just not doing it at all.
Do you want to respond to that one, perhaps, Mayor Luke Smith?
Is that a question, Jeff? No. I agree with Jeff. When we presented our vision to the staff at council, we actually said we have no plan B. We only have plan A, because if you have a plan B, then you're going to set yourself up for a failure. So we just said we're doing plan A. There's no plan B option. We're just going in this direction. So I agree with you, Jeff.
Fantastic. So some affirmation from the panel here. Other questions, ladies and gentlemen, please just raise your hand and we'll get to you. Oh, yes, sir. Perhaps, Dan, if you could just grab the microphone.
Thank you. Raf Basili from Brisbane City Council. There was a comment at the start about local government being roads, rates and rubbish. What services do you see going into the future for local government?
Okay. I think the perspective local government needs to take is, as I said earlier, it's about the city. So what are the needs of the city? I think it doesn't mean we do everything, but it absolutely means we lead the charge in everything. And we take responsibility for ensuring that need is met. We have to have a collaborative approach, not just with our neighbouring councils, but also with state and federal government. So if we don't have that, then that's going to ensure that those needs aren't met. But the reality is local government is changing. We are now doing far more than we ever were in the past. You cannot describe it in just simply roads, rates and rubbish anymore. But we have to lead the charge for the needs to be met in our cities.
If I can just add there, the City Council, we need to make our communities vibrant so they can prosper. We're currently running a Vibrant and Active Towns and Villages project. We wish to upgrade the main street in Tambury Mountain, the main street in Boona, and part of Bow Desert. So those projects are ongoing now. We had the master plans. We've applied for funding to the state government. and then we'll decide how we're actually going to go. But some of our villages and towns are dying. Tanbury Mountain, my people are very parochial. They love what they've got, and people love coming up to us. We're killed by tourism. But the medium strip down Main Street itself is very old and tired. We need to make that vibrant for the next generation. Not the people living there now, not people at my age, but for the next generation. So that people come up in 10 years' time, they say, wow, this is a fantastic place. Because they won't enjoy what we currently have, because it's getting far too tired. So we need to make our communities vibrant so that the businesses can actually prosper.
So great question. I just wanted to add that in local government we have the very great privilege of having a responsibility and obligation to help shape the communities in a way that we would like to see them, or the community would like to see them. And a big part of that is building those collaborative partnerships with your community, with your industry groups. It is absolutely essential, but we have the ability to do all those other things other than roads, rates and rubbish, which are very essential services that we deliver, but we do so much else. Local government would have to be one of the most exciting spaces to live and work in. It's just fabulous.
I just want to add,
Yes,
sorry, just to flow on from everything that everyone's saying is, for the region that I come from in Brisbane is very green. You know, I look after Mount Cootha all the way out to the west. So one of the things I say consistently to my constituents, you know, I am pushing the envelope with council. I come in from a different perspective. I do come from construction, but I believe in sustainability. And that traditionally we've been known as road rates and rubbish, but what I add to it now is recreation. For us to continue to have our green space and our recreation, we being councils and the local government, need to really push our private organisations to come on board and work in partnerships with us to see how we can keep our recreation as green as what it is. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We've got time for one more question, so I'm going to go to the gentleman at the front there, sir.
Yeah, I'm Dan Hall, Deputy Mayor of Somerset Regional Council. The only thing that I'd like to say is that we've been involved in innovation since I can remember. I've been in local government for over 30 years, and I find that all it is today now is we've got more tools to work with, and I think it's a very exciting place that we're at the moment. But it will take a little bit of time to get everyone used to it, but I think it's really good.
Thank you. Any response from the panel?
Yeah, it's a
there,
great point.
Matt?
And innovation's been with us since the dawn of time. You're sitting on an innovative project that once someone wanted to sit down, so they created a chair. Recently I went and spoke at a Samoan group, and they gave me a taupo, which is a blanket made out of bark that's peeled off a tree, squashed together, and then formed into a blanket, right? So, when I heard that story, I thought, that's innovation. One day someone was cold and they wanted to get warm. They sat in and looked around and saw trees. I'm going to peel bark off, squash it together, make a blanket. I'm suddenly warm. That's what innovation is. It's just that now we're doing it digitally. And there's all these other tools, as the Deputy Mayor was saying, that we can actually do this to actually move forward. The other difference, though, is that we're utilising innovation to transform cities. And when we toured Kitchener Waterloo, and you'll hear from Rod later on today, we identify with that city in Canada, because here they had no beaches, no mountains, no lovely areas. It's just a train line, old warehouses. And they had to come up with an idea because people were leaving their city. So they created an innovation hub called Communitech. And they did a deal with the university where they said, if anyone comes up with an idea on this university campus, it's their idea, it's not the university's idea, which was new. So everyone flocked to the area. They enjoyed, startups started happening in Communitech. Venture capitalists came, and now they are the absolute digital headquarters of Canada, just through having that, just in 8 years. Google have the headquarters there. BlackBerry have headquarters there. The smartwatch was designed there. The issue that VW had, remember some time ago they had the emissions issue, was solved at Communitech. So it's just getting people together, and it's transformed the city, and that's the biggest difference we see now.
I agree that we've all been doing innovation since the dawn of time. However, I think the difference was shown in Kim's slides. So we've gone the Industrial Revolution, and then in the last 15 years we've had quite the technology boom. So things are happening much, much quicker, and we've got much more of a global reach in change. And I think for local governments and for a leader in local government, it can be scary or it can be an opportunity, but we think about roads. So if we go back to the roads debate, that I've already got driverless cars in the next 5 to 10 years. So what are we going to do? A road lasts between 50 and 100 years. Our council invests 33% of all our revenue into roads. So what will happen when cars don't use those roads and we have prepared ourselves for the next 50 to 100 years of things as it sits today, as they stand today? So I think that we're just in the age of we're trying to catch up and we're trying to sort of get ahead of the game so that we don't make the mistakes, because we have potential right now to make quite a bit of mistakes by not doing anything, and then all of a sudden be left with this mess that we have to clean up. So I think days like today are about getting ahead of the game and starting to sort of predict the future somewhat, and so that we can stay ahead of it.
I think that's a fantastic way to end this session. The thought that the greatest risk that is before us is the risk of doing nothing and the risk of inaction. And there's a lot of organisations, and in fact the armed services will say exactly the same thing, and they do have to work under a lot of duress and pressure, as do our local councils. Ladies and gentlemen, can you please join me in thanking our councillors and mayors this morning? Thank you so much. Very comforting to know that we have such leadership here in Queensland, and you can see the next generation of innovation and transformation before our eyes. That's fantastic.